Big LEZ'S League, an all rugby league experience.
Hello, welcome back to Big LEZ'S League, an all rugby league experience. Make sure if you haven't already to go ahead and click the subscribe button, become a part of the Big LEZ'S League community. Today on the podcast, we are going through our Dally M predictions. All of the Dally M awards we can predict, we are going to predict them. Coach, captain, rookie, player of the year, as well as our team of the year as well. We've got plenty to get through. So let's get straight into it. Our Dally M predictions for 2024. We'll start off with the coach of the year. Now, this one's a little bit interesting. There's three guys for me that stand out. The first one is Ivan Cleary. And I know a lot of people are saying Panthers bandwagon. Why are you picking Ivan Cleary? Obviously, it's the same old thing. Why wouldn't you want someone new? Look what Ivan Cleary's done in the past 5 years. This is going to potentially be their fifth straight grand final in a row for Penrith, right? And he's been at the helm the whole time. Obviously they lost the first one against Melbourne, but to continue to come back and back and back again consistently to the point where they're, as I said, contending for their fourth straight premiership. And look, it is off the back of the players that they have as well. They've got some very talented players, but you can't say that this team has lost a lot over the past few years as well. They continue to lose guys. Api Coruscant, Viliami Kikau, Stephen Crichton. They've lost a ton of guys over the past few years. They're going to lose Jerome Luai next year as well. It is going to be very interesting to see how they go next year, but you look at what they've done with losing key talents in this side over the past 4 years. They have continued to show up. They've continued to, make grand finals. And as I said, their fifth straight grand final in a row. It is unheard of. It is definitely one of the best teams of the era. And I think a big part of that, it has to go to Ivan Cleary. I guess the blame for that has to go on part to Ivan Cleary and what he's been able to do as the head coach of that side. So for me, he is definitely in the conversation. I think that the next guy is obviously Cam Serraldo. What he's done with the Bulldogs, taking them from where they were on the ladder to being, from being the worst defensive team as well in the competition to now being the second best defensive team, not too far behind the Penrith Panthers, who are the current premiers. But also, going from 15th, I think it was, to, potentially being a top four side by finals. It is insane, the turnaround. And again, you can blame some of the players that they've got into this system. Viliami Kikau, Stephen Crichton, Matt Burton as well, there in the 6, has really started to find his own. Toby Sexton there in the number 7, Connor Tracy, Bronson Sherry. They've got a ton of talent throughout that side. But the key thing for me is that they work hard for each other. And that is, because of the standard that Cam Serraldo has set at the club. It's all good and well to have a bunch of talent and a lot of individuals in a side, but how to manage all of those individuals and get the best out of them, that is up to the coaching staff. And I think that Cam Serraldo is definitely a big part of that. And you can see a lot of the senior players, including Josh Adokar, a lot of the other guys that have come into the squad as well, they cannot, speak a poor word about Cam Serraldo. It is all positive. So for me, in my opinion, I believe that Cam Serraldo is definitely high on that list. And I think the last guy who a lot of people have been talking about as a bit of a smoky is Shane Flanagan. Again, you're looking at a guy that's taken a side from the bottom of the ladder, pushing into the top 8. They were predicted to win the Spoon this year, the Dragons. What they've been able to accomplish with the side that they have, and they haven't been outstanding or, consistent, but they've just scraped in there. And then that's off the back of hard work, effort, improving every single week, finding combinations. Kyle Flanagan's been a huge signing. I know that it's coach's son and, everyone's going to go off at that, but I think that he's been huge, just playing off the back of Ben Hunt and defensively what he does for that side as well, shoring up that left-hand side. He's been huge for them. I think that, as I said, just setting standards at the club, what he's managed to do and turn that thing around, that ship around, I should say, at St. George, I think is outstanding. So I think he'll definitely be one of the nominees as well. In terms of who gets it, I think it will be Cam Serraldo. Just, again, what he's done at the Dogs, where they are now, the culture that they've got at the club over the past few years has changed drastically. And they are, getting back to that dogs of war sort of mentality and looking side, particularly with the smaller pack as well. That's something you got to look at with Serraldo as well. What he's managed to do with this small pack. He's almost, and I wouldn't go this far, but he's slowly starting to change the game. You look at some of the forward packs now in the NRL, off the back of the side that the Bulldogs have named week in, week out. The Gold Coast Titans is a perfect example. Look at the smaller packs that they've got in that side, with guys like Aaron Clark, Chris Randall in the rotation there as well. They've got some much smaller forwards. Obviously, the Warriors, Dylan Walker, Jazz Tavanga, a perfect example there. But the Dogs obviously leading the way on that front with the pack that they've got. And you look at the side that versed the Dolphins the other day as well. I mean, the bench was absolutely tiny. You had Jamin Salmon, Bailey Hayward. Who else was on the bench there? Curtis Morin. And I'm just trying to remember the last one. The name escapes me now. That's going to annoy me. That is going to annoy me. I'm going to have a little bit of a look at the lineup that was named last week. I'm pretty sure that they got the same side going into this week as well. Just quickly as well, congratulations to Ron Coote on being named the next Immortal, heavily deserved. And I think the thing is as well with Ron Coote, he obviously is well before my time, but you listen to some of the people talk about him who have been able to watch his career or know a lot about him and have watched the highlights and just know Ron Coote as a person as well, have just had so many positive things to say about his career. They speak so highly about him. Ex-players, how well they speak about him and how well-versed they are in his career as well. Definitely well-deserved. I don't think that Cam Smith realistically would have got it, as well as those other guys like Cooper Cronk, Thurston, stuff like that. You got to remember, and it's not that they won't get it later in their tenure, and obviously over the next few years they'll definitely be in the contention for that. But you got to remember, Smith, Billy Slater, Cronk, Thurston, these guys only retired 5, 6, 7 years ago. Their careers are still very, very fresh. And when you've got a guy like Ron Coote, who has been outstanding and has obviously played a long, long time ago, not to show any disrespect to Ron Coote there, but and who is still waiting for that immortal status after a terrific career, plenty of premierships across Rabbitohs, Roosters. I think that he definitely deserves that shot over those guys. And I think that we can, exercise a bit of patience and wait, because I guarantee you that those sort of guys, Slater, Cronk, Thurston, Cam Smith especially, they're going to get it very, very soon, a little bit later down the track. You've just got to be a bit patient with that one. The pack I was talking about here, Harry Hayes, Curtis Morin, Bailey Hayward and Jamin Salmon off the bench there for the Dogs. I mean, what about that pack? You've got a back rower who's been playing centre as well, and obviously started off, I believe, as a winger too, in Harry Hayes. You got Jamin Salmon, who came through as a half, playing back row at at the Panthers a little bit, and obviously playing that role at the Dogs as well. Curtis Morin, who's a back rower, who's just coming in, going through the middle and going absolutely a-ham, and then Bailey Hayward, who's a halfback that played a little bit of hooker in New South Wales Cup, now is playing full-time lock forward off the bench. I mean, as I said, Cam Seraldo, the way that he has, and I'm going to say it again here, in part changed the game in regards to the style of middles that we are seeing. I think that you definitely have to have him above the other two guys in Ivan Cleary and Shane Flanagan. Although, obviously, if we do get Shane Flanagan in there, it wouldn't shock me in the slightest either. We'll quickly go through the hard-earned player, the VB hard-earned index. Obviously, have their player of the year. Adam Fanua-Blake got it last year. I think he gets it again. Just looking at some of the games that he's had this season and where he's been on the leaderboard, particularly last week, he was above people by about 60, 70 points. So I think he gets it again. Such a hard worker. Himself and Mitch Barnett will definitely be at the top of that list. You look at the work that they're doing at the Warriors. It is miles ahead of a lot of other teams in this competition. And I think it's probably the best front row pairing this season. Captain of the year. Now, we're going to talk a little bit more in depth about this, but there's only one guy, for me at least, that I think is pretty much locked in for that award now, and that's Stephen Crichton. What he's been able to do at the Dogs, and I know that this is a bit of a love the Dogs little segment here, but, just looking at what this side's done over the past year, the turnaround that they've had, a big part of that's Seraldo, which we've talked about ad nauseum, but a big part of that is also Stephen Crichton, the leadership that he's come in with, and, obviously with, his persona at Penrith and him obviously being one of the muck around boys with Jerome Luai, Brian Toto, you wouldn't really look at him at that stage of his career and say, that guy, I can see him being a leader. Although, I don't know him personally. I wouldn't have seen those qualities in him. We're just talking about outside looking in. The persona that he had at Penrith, the muck around boys with Jerome Luai and Brian Toto, the gang that they had over there, you wouldn't really look at that guy and go, fuck, I think he's going to be an outstanding captain. But what he's been able to come over and do at the Dogs, he's been a big part of the standard that they've set there. He's very vocal and just, leading with his actions as well. Some of the things that he does in game. And you just see a lot of the other guys as well in that team talk so highly of Critter as well. I think that it is going to be one of those awards where, there's going to be a ton of nominees, but I think that it has to be Stephen Crichton who wins this award. And particularly if the Dogs do finish close to the the top four, I should say. He has definitely got to be a shoo-in for Captain of the Year. What he's been able to be a part of in terms of the turnaround of that side, it's Stephen Crichton for me all day. I'd love to hear any other guys, but, no one really else comes to mind in terms of an influential Captain of the Year. You obviously got the main ones like Isaiah Yeo. Obviously, at the Panthers, you've got Patrick Carrigan at the Broncos, but then again, the Broncos haven't had too much success. So for me, it'd be between Yowie and Critter, but I think that Critter's a mile ahead of Yowie. So I think that Critter gets the award there, Captain of the Year. Again, I'd love to hear if you have any other options there for Captain of the Year that I might not be thinking of. But for me, it's Critter all of the way. Rookie of the Year. Now, let me just get something straight here. If he was eligible and if he didn't get suspended in round 2, Lockie Galvin is my Rookie of the Year. What he has been able to do with that West Tigers side, just ignore the fact that they are last on the ladder. Ignore the fact that they are last on the ladder and look at his individual performances. His stats are literally above every other 5'8" in the competition when it comes to tackle bust, when it comes to defense, when it comes to meters in a game as well. He just works harder than a lot of the other 5'8" in this competition. And not to say that the other 5'8" don't work hard. He's competing up against Tom Dearden, who's had a great year as well and played Origin this season. He's competing up against Jerome Luai, who, with the absence of Nathan Cleary, has driven that Penrith success and kept them where they are on the ladder right now, or been a big part of that as well. You've got Luke Brooks, who since coming to the Manly Seagulls has been absolutely outstanding and has had some absolute blinders. Defensively, he's been extremely switched on, and it's been a big part as to why defensively the Manly Seagulls seem to improve every single week. He sets a standard there, being one of the smaller guys on the field, but attacking-wise, he's an absolute gun. His running game has gone to another level, and having that pressure taken off him by leaving the West Tigers, I think has helped him immensely in his career. But I think that, respectfully, the 19-year-old Lachlan Galvin has been miles ahead of all of these other guys. He was 18 at the start of the year. He's half a year younger than what I am. He only just turned 19 last month. What this guy has been able to do coming into this team as a teenager and turning around the standard, playing good football, and been a big part of the games that they've won this year, particularly against the South Sydney last weekend with that performance that he had. As I said, if he was eligible, it would be him right up there for Rookie of the Year, and then a massive, massive gap. Now, at the end of that gap, for me, in my opinion, and I've double-checked this, he's eligible because he's only played one game in 2023. It is Kale Ito from the Cronulla Sharks for me. What he's been able to do this season, how he's gotten better every single game and been a key part of the, really sound attack on that left-hand side. It was a big call to drop Siosifa Talakai to the bench and into the back row, but it has paid off immensely. What he's been able to do in this team and just the footy that he's been able to play, the meters that he gets each week, the work that he puts in on that left-hand side, just coming out of yardage. The big reason as to why the Sharks are strong coming out of yardage is because the runs that the outside back's taken. A big part of that is Kale Ito, and particularly over the past few weeks, he's been extremely solid. So for me, it's Kale Ito. And then again, I think there's a little bit of a gap between some of the other guys, but give me your thoughts. Who do you think is going to be the Rookie of the Year this season? I think that it would be Lockie Galvin. And to be honest, big call. Obviously, we'll give away who my actual pick here is in a second for the Team of the Year. But My 5'8" of the year, if eligible, would be Lachlan Galvin as well. And look, big call. I know that a number of people have sort of spoken about it. They've spoken about it on Bloke in a Bar, and I just agree immensely. And just watching him all season, keeping a close eye on him all year, he has to be up there for me. So Lockie Galvin, if eligible, would be my Rookie of the Year, but Kale Idor is my prediction. Player of the Year, and look, I've had a few arguments and discussions with people, in the comments of posts or in the comments of my posts when I've talked about it on the podcast. But Jerome Hughes is my player of the year for me. He has been the best player in the competition this year. Look, call it a rough call, but I seriously think that I can make a pretty strong argument that he has been the best player all year. Look at where Melbourne are on the ladder. Look at the guys that they've had out, and look at the guy in their spine that has been there the most this season. It's Jerome Hughes, and they are first on the ladder. They are performing well. He's had a career best year, whether it be his running game, kicking game, passing game. Everything has just seemed to have gone to another level, and particularly when he's come through as a 5'8" fullback, the Gold Coast Titans, from where he was then to where he is now, it is just a absolute mile apart difference. Look, I've talked about this guy on the podcast many times. I've had a little bit to do with him just in terms of some social media sharing when I just started the podcast, and obviously just a bit of advice around running social media as well. But just watching what he's done, I've bought a few of his tees as well. He does sell and make some and manufacture some tees, kicking tees that is. But Peter Breen came over to the Melbourne Storm. He's been at the Bulldogs, West Tigers. He's been at a number of NRL clubs. I think he was at the Tigers for the preseason this year, but just helping them out with passing games, obviously having a rugby union background, passing game, kicking game, stuff like that. He's worked closely with Harry Grant on his service at a dummy half and just workouts that improve the overall fitness of a dummy half, but also, just get that pass really crisp, the service really crisp, and you look at how crisp his service is and what he can do with the football at a dummy half. A big part of that, or a little part of that, I should say, is Peter Breen. But Peter Breen, he's worked closely with Cam Munster and Jerome Hughes on kicking game. There's been footage of it that he's posted online as well when he was there in 2022, I want to say. And you just look at how much his kicking game has improved since 2022 in the 2023-2024 seasons. He's been outstanding. And look, for me, he's the informed halfback in the competition. He's probably the informed player in the competition right now. People can make a strong case otherwise, but for me, it's Jerome Hughes. Now, the suggestion I got today was James Tedesco, and I can definitely see him getting that award. But I think Jerome Hughes has been more consistent. And for me, in my opinion, he has been the best player in the competition. And no, I'm not looking at all at the origin performance of James Tedesco. I'm looking at his in-season form. And I think, as I said, for me at least, Jerome Hughes has been a little bit more consistent, but he's also been very, very high in terms of his work rate. And has just continued to impress every single week, no matter his opponent, whether it's a top 8 or bottom 8 side. He's just seemed to impress and figure the defense out very, very quickly. So for me, it's Jerome Hughes. I'd love to hear what you guys think about that one. Let's move on to the final bit of the agenda, or as a teacher would say, the final ticket item, the team of the year for 2024. My prediction. Let's get into the fullback position. I think it's a 2-horse race. I don't see anyone else in this list. And look, could be a little bit controversial. Obviously, the Reece Walshes of the world, who you ignore, certain parts of the season and look at his overall year. He's had a pretty decent year, Reece Walsh. You look at some of the other guys in the competition as well, like Gutho, who just pulls big performance after big performance out on a number of occasions this year for the side, particularly towards the back end of the year for the Eels. But for me, I think that Dylan Edwards and James Tedesco are the standouts. I think those two will be the nominees for sure in that list of nominees. I am going to pick James Tedesco, and it's a simple reason as to why. I think that Dylan Edwards, obviously with injury and obviously being out during the origin period, I think that would have hurt him. And as much as James Tedesco unfortunately missed out on origin selection at fullback, obviously after game 1, I think that Dylan Edwards, he has been, he's been great, obviously earning him that origin selection. But I think James Tedesco playing more football, and you obviously having more big games, in my opinion. And as I said, Dylan Edwards being out, being injured, being playing origin, I think that it puts James Tedesco in front of Dylan Edwards for me. And I think that overall, you look at the whole year, Tedesco has been better. And look, again, I can just see myself getting pounded in the comments for that one. But for me, Tedesco's been the best fullback this season, and he will get that spot, in my opinion. If you're looking at not Origin, but in-season football throughout the entire year, Tedesco's been the best fullback this season. Wingers of the year, I think one of them is locked in, and look, despite his most recent form, it is Dom Young. He's the second highest try scorer. And in big games, he has had some humongous performances coming out of his own end. Try scoring ability is through the roof. What he can do with his body and, how he moves, his size, his strength, what he's been able to do in some big games for the Roosters this season. I think he'll be locked in just for the year. The first half of the year or the first 3 quarters of the year. As I said, I'm not looking at recent form and obviously defensive issues. He's sort of starting to get back into some good form as well, Dominic Young. So I think they'll throw him over the line. But for me, Dom Young will get one of those spots. He's locked in. I think the second spot is between Jacob Kiraz, Kyle Felt, and Zach Lomax. Kiraz, just his meterage out of his own end every single week. He at one point was getting 300 meters across 4 or 5 games in a row at the midpoint of the season. I think during the Origin period, he was outstanding, but throughout the year, he has been extremely solid, and to the point where I was saying that he could be a smoky when they were picking the side for game 2. Obviously, that didn't come to be, but I think he'll definitely be there in and around the future. He is an exceptional talent. He's very underrated for how good he actually is. And I think that he's in for a big future at the Bulldogs. So Kiraz, for me, this season has been outstanding. Kyle Felt, I think he's third or fourth on the try-scoring list this year, particularly you look at the narrative of at the start of the season. Obviously, we didn't even know if he was going to be playing first grade. He's pretty much played nearly every game. I think he's played 19 or 18 games this season, Kyle Felt. And each and every one of those, he's been outstanding. In majority of those, he has scored one or more tries. I think that he has been one of the more influential and as I said, the story of him throughout the season. Obviously, we were unaware if he was going to be picked. We thought that Sammy Valemei, off the back of the form last year, was going to get that spot. But the big call by Todd Payten to drop Sammy Valemei to reserve grade. He's been playing centre and reserve grade ever since. And Kyle Felt's been there on the wing, and he's absolutely killed it this season to the point where, as I said, he's fourth on the try-scoring list. He's on the top of a lot of stats that I've looked through on the NRL app as well. For wingers, I think that he will be there for sure. And then Zach Lomax, what he's been able to do this season off the back of obviously a lot of contract talk. He has chosen to go to the Parramatta Reels, and obviously that could have affected him in a number of ways. He could have looked more to next season with Parramatta and not focused much on the Dragons and their footy, but he chose to stay solid to the Dragons to finish off his tenure there in style. He's made Origin as well. He's had a humongous year, Zach Lomax, and I think that puts him very high on the pecking order. If I'm picking one of these guys to get that award, Kiraz, Kyle Felt, or Lomax, I think, and again, this might be a little bit controversial, and I know you're going to come for me in the comments, but I'm going to go Kiraz. I think that he's been the best out of all of those guys in regards to form throughout the entire season, and in big games, he has been the best out of the 3 of these guys as well in terms of in-season games. So for me, Kiraz will get that other spot. Dom Young and Jacob Kiraz, the wingers for the team of the year. Centers, again, I think one guy will be locked in, and it's my captain of the year, Stephen Crichton. I think he's locked into one center spot. Form, but also influence on that Bulldog side, which we've spoken about ad nauseum. We don't really need to go into that again. Now, again, and this is going to be a very controversial list already. I'm just going to warn you now. The other 3 centers that I think will be in contention are, and these are probably, in my opinion, the most consistent centers. I've gone through all of my team of the weeks. I've gone through stats from the NRL website as well. One, and yeah, I'm going to get hounded for this one, but Tane Milne is the first one. Big games for South Sydney. He is torn up, particularly last week's performance, running 200 metres, 20 or so runs. He's done this a number of times this season, and big games for South Sydney. He's been one of those guys to stand up. So Tane Milne for me is one. Dane Gagai is another one. I just feel like he's been one of the better informed centers in the comp, and obviously that earned him a recall to Origin. So Dane Gagai is another one. And Matsumoko, what he's been able to do at Canberra, a little bit of a silent achiever this season. I think that he's been one of the informed centers and the most consistent center in the competition at the moment. And that includes all of the guys that I've rattled off here. I think that Matsumoko has been the most consistent. So therefore, in my opinion, I think that we will get a bit of a smoky here with Stephen Crichton and Matsumoko as your centers of the year. I'm already ready to be hounded in the comments, but I'm going to stick by it. I think that, as I said, he's been the most consistent center. He's been a bit of a silent achiever, but when it comes to the stats and when it comes to breaking everything down, he has been outstanding. And, obviously this doesn't count towards Dally M points, but there was one point in the season where he had dislocated his shoulder back-to-back weeks, and Ricky Stewart wanted to take him out of the side and rest him, and he kept playing, and he's played throughout the entire year. I don't think he's had a game off to Matsumoko this season, other than the bye. So he's been, tough for them this season, playing with that shoulder. And just, as I said, being one of the more consistent centers in the competition, if not the most consistent this year. Matsumoko for me is in there. I've got Matsumoko and Stephen Crichton. Now, halves. Let's go into the halves. For me, since Lachlan Galvin is not eligible for 5'8" of the year, we spoke about the three other guys that will be in contention: Tom Dearden, Jerome Luai, and obviously Luke Brooks there as well, for all separate reasons. For me, I am going to go with Tom Dearden. I think that out of all of those guys, he's played the most 5'8", and he's done it the best. For me, Tom Dearden, out of all of those guys, he's played the most 5'8". You look back, obviously, during the Origin period when DCE was out, Brooks went into 7. Jerome Luai obviously has been playing a lot of 7 this year with Nathan Cleary out of the side. So both of those guys have had big stints at 7, whether big or small. I think that Tom Dearden, he's played 6 all season for the Cowboys. And for that reason alone, as well as obviously being the best 6, in my opinion, out of that list, that 3-man list, I think that Tom Dearden gets the 6. Number 7, we've spoken about him ad nauseum. We don't need to go too into it here, but I have got Jerome Hughes in that number 7 halfback of the year. As I said, the best player in the comp this season, in my opinion. Front rowers, I don't think this will come as a shock to anyone, but I think that as well, you might get a few people here and there that are going to go for the boring answers in Payne Haas and obviously other guys like that who, James Fisher-Harris, stuff like that. For me, in my opinion, it is going to be Addin Fanua-Blake and it is going to be Mitch Barnett. 2 of the hardest working front rowers in the competition, in my opinion. I think they'll both be there, and I think that I seriously think there's a bit of a gap between the other front rowers in the competition this season. I think that the other 2 front rowers have had here and there slumps in form. If I'm being hypercritical, I think these 2 guys have just been switched on, and bad games have been good games for other front rowers, if that makes sense. Their floor is quite high still this season, Addin Fanua-Blake and Mitch Barnett. So for me, they'll be the 2 front rowers of the year, and I think that's huge for the Warriors as well, just showing that they have probably one of the better forward packs in the competition. Number 9, I think this is the boring answer, but I think it's the right answer. You look at the most consistent 9 in the comp, I think that it's Harry Grant. Big performances, big games. He's been that shining light there at hooker, the kicking game out of dummy half, the service, the running game that he has. Just a lot of other factors as well about his game that just make him the best 9 in the competition. I think that Harry Grant gets it. As I said, it's the boring answer, but it's the right answer in my opinion. Other guys, potentially Reece Robson. He's been in some great form when the Cowboys have been on. He's been on. Brandon Smith at stages this season has been good, but I think that he's a mile behind the 2 that I've just mentioned there, Robson and Harry Grant. I think Harry Grant gets it, though. Another one. All right, let's move on to the back rower of the year, or the back rowers of the year. Just quickly, the camera literally just died. I had to charge it quickly to come back to you guys, hence the little transition there. But let's get into our back rowers of the season. Now, I've got a few nominations here, obviously a lot more than what I've had for any other position that we've talked about today. But the first spot, or the spots for me, are going to be divided up between Viliami Kikau, Hudson Young, Jacob Preston, Dave Fafita, and Angus Crichton. All of those guys for me could get any one of these spots. I think that the big one for me, the one that I think is locked in this season, and particularly with the year that he's had. Again, storyline for me at least. Obviously, a guy who has battled so hard to get back to first grade after a really rough off season, and obviously started the year in New South Wales Cup to going in onto playing Origin as well. He has been one of the better back rowers this season by far, if not the informed back rower in the competition. So for me, Angus Crichton's got to be there. Then that leaves a spot between Kikau, Hudson Young, Jacob Preston, and Dave Fafita. For me, if you're talking about who is the best and, has the highest ceiling out of all of these back rowers, it's Dave Fafita. But who has been the best and most consistent in this season? For me, and look, I guess you could say Dave Fafita for that one as well. But for me, I think you got to give it to Hudson Young. Just the season that he's had, a bit of an, not an underachiever, but I guess, again, another guy on this Canberra side who wasn't a shining light compared to a lot of these other back rowers, but he puts in a ton of work every single week, and particularly over the last few weeks would have racked up a ton of points, getting heavily involved for this Canberra Raiders side. I think that Hudson Young will be the other guy. Wouldn't shock me if it's Dave Fafita. I think that it's going to be a two-horse race between Dave Fafita and Hudson Young. But I think Hudson Young, for me at least, I'm just going to throw him in there because it's a smoky, and I think that he's worked very hard this season. He's been in great form. He got that Origin Game 1 jersey. The only reason he wasn't in Origin for Games 2 and 3 was just simply because he didn't fit into the rotation that Madge wanted. But yeah, Hudson Young, I think that he has had a huge season. I think that he played well in Game 1 of Origin, even though it doesn't count. But, just in season-wise as well, I think has been very consistent, very strong, and I think that he will be the other back rower of this season. That just leaves us with the lock forward position. Who gets it, Isaiah Yeo or Paddy Carrigan? It's a tough one. Paddy Carrigan's had some big games, even in games that Brisbane have lost and not looked the best in. He's had some huge performances this season. And, there has been a few lulls here and there with Brisbane, and it has resulted in him having one or two lulls this season. But he's been in my team of the week. And I know this doesn't really matter, but he's been in my team of the week for most weeks. Him and Isaiah Yeo have been battling it out there. Stats-wise, he's been right on top or very, very close to being right on top of it. Again, it's just a two-horse race between Isaiah Yeo, Paddy Carrigan, Cam Murray, I think you can throw in there as well, but he's been out for a lot of the season. So for me, I think it will go to Isaiah Yeo. But again, wouldn't shock me in the slightest if Paddy Carrigan does get that jersey. With how hard he's worked in that Broncos side, despite results, he has looked very, very good individually and has been in great form individually as well. Individually has been, I think, the second most informed lock forward in the competition, just slightly behind Isaiah Yeo. What Isaiah Yeo has managed to do, obviously with Cleary being out, I know that this shouldn't really matter, but individually, I think that he's gone to that next level while Cleary's been out, and I think that he definitely has been the informed lock forward in the competition. I think he gets that spot. So my Dally M team of the year is Tedesco at fullback, Dom Young and Jacob Kiraz on the wings, Stephen Crichton and not Tane Milne, Matsimoko in the centres. So let me just cross that out so I know when I'm doing the post up. It is Matsimoko. Jacob Kiraz got the other one. Tom Dearden, Jerome Hughes in the halves, Adam Fanua, Blake, Mitch Barnett, front row, Harry Grant, 9. Viliami Kikau, Hudson Young, and Angus Crichton, not Viliami Kikau. Let's cross that out, and cross Dave Fafita out. Hudson Young, Angus Crichton, and my lock forward of the year is Isaiah Yeo. Tedesco, Dom Young, Kiraz, Critter, Timoko, Dearden, Hughes, Adam Fanua, Blake, Mitch Barnett, Harry Grant, Hudson Young, Angus Crichton, Isaiah Yeo. There it is. Make sure you go ahead and leave the comments on any calls you think are dumb, any calls you think that are wrong from me. Who do you have in certain positions? If I've got it wrong, let me know who you think is going to be in that Dally M team of the year. Anyone that I've forgotten to bring up, please bring up in the comments below. I'd love to have a conversation with you guys about the Dally M team of the year. It's very exciting. Cannot wait to see how we go. Cannot just wait to see if some of these smokies pop off as well, especially your Matsimokos of the world that I've chucked in here. Hudson Young for me is a bit of a smoky in there as well. Keen to see if those smokies do pop off. Let me know how many of these calls I would have gotten right. We'll see you guys in the next one.